So we know that immediately after Donald Trump was clearly the loser in the 2020 election, they began a multi-phase attempt to overturn the election. That came in a variety of forms: personal accusations that the election had been stolen, attempts in the legal system to change the outcome, attempts by state legislatures to overturn the results, and then of course what happened in DC. But what you need to know is that many of the foundational lies that drove all of those different phases, things about Smartmatic and Dominion and big dumps, those sorts of things, they knew immediately that they weren't true. So it started relatively fast. 2 weeks after the election, a team of lawyers closely allied with Donald J. Trump held a widely watched news conference at the Republican Party's headquarters in Washington. I believe that was the one with Sidney Powell and Ellis and Giuliani. At that event, they laid out a conspiracy theory claiming that a voting machine company had worked with an election software firm, the financier George Soros and Venezuela, because why not, to steal the election. But here's the issue. Before they'd even done that conference, let alone the dozens of court cases that they would eventually go on to lose whilst farting COVID onto each other, they had already had a memo, an internal memo, that rebutted most of those claims about Dominion and about Smartmatic. So that memo is now available online. You can go and you can find not only the summaries of what claims had already been determined by Trump's team to be untrue. This is an internal memo to Trump's team, but also all of the research they had done, tons of links about how they demonstrated what's true and what's not. But the overall most important points are that the memo found that Dominion did not use voting technology from the software company Smartmatic in 2020, that Dominion had no direct ties to Venezuela or to George Soros, and that there was no evidence that Dominion's leadership had connections to left-wing Antifa activists. But that did not stop them, not just from up until then making those claims, but making those claims until literally this week. They are still doing it. We're gonna give you those, some of those citations. But JR, I am imagining you're not gonna be super surprised that they knew that these were lies when they told them.
This is the basis for not all of them, but many of the conversations that people have about, man, are they just that dumb? Or, are they just trying to pull the wool over our eyes and they know that they're lying? No, they always know that they're lying. Again, we talked about the new Surgeon General of the state in Florida, the head of all the doctors there, who went to Harvard. He knows what he's talking about. They know what they're doing, and then afterwards they craft an entire thing to look exactly the opposite. Because there's no service from our politicians at this point. They're not trying to serve us based off of reality. They're trying to serve us their reality so they can get voted in again. It just has nothing to do with reality anymore. So if you come across some evidence that refutes what you're thinking, you have to go, okay, well, let's ignore that really quick. Let's go ahead and move on with that, because it's not gonna get you anywhere. You've already dug in this deep. How anticlimactic would it be if then a day before they have their press conference, they go, so you guys, we had a bunch of lies that were teed up for us to tell you. And you know what, we found out that it's not true. So we're gonna go home. That's it?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, you're totally right. They tell the lies, generally to get reelected. But in this case, you have all the wrong incentives. You have lawyers with no ethics telling lies so that they can continue to get paid, or at least think that they're gonna get paid. They were working for Trump, and so like Giuliani ain't getting paid, but he thought he would. You have the lies being told by members of the campaign for a couple of different reasons. One, so they can continue to raise massive amounts of money. They were using these lies as they were doing their text blasts, asking for people to donate money and all that. But also to put just enough cover over the, for instance, state legislature attempts to overturn election results. It's not that they're demonstrating anything that they're saying, but they have to say something. There has to, at least for their base, seem to be some sort of a case to be made. And so there were a lot of incentives moving in the wrong directions that led to them telling lies that they knew were lies when they told them. Now, to be fair, Ms. Powell and Mr. Giuliani have not responded to messages seeking comment on the internal memo. Representatives from Mr. Trump also did not respond to emails, although it is not yet established whether Donald Trump himself ever saw this memo. The legal team did, the team did, his goons and mooks and all of that did. We don't know if Trump did, but if he'd seen it, he wouldn't have read it anyway. So what's the difference?
Exactly, 100%.
Now, What we do know, though, is that Giuliani in a deposition referenced the memo saying they wanted Trump to lose because they could raise more money. So what he means there is the people who put together the memo, despite listing all of the evidence that led to their conclusions, were lying to the legal team so that Trump would lose the election, which he'd already lost, so that those researchers could raise more money. That's not just projection, it's nonsensical projection, because of course they are trying to raise money. Who are the researchers and how are the researchers raising money? That doesn't even make any sense.
And what for? What are they running for? Research office? Like,
I don't know.
Raising money or just, again, fundraising and these guys isn't about taking in money to then use for this other good, like maybe a campaign. Campaigning or fundraising for them is, oh, let's get some money from people. And then after we get all that money, let's put it in our pockets. That's fundraising to Rudy Giuliani, because they're just trying to fundraise, take some of the money that we could have been pilfering from people. Yeah, they're getting it now.
Maybe. Anyway, so look, that was way back in November of last year. More recently, a lawyer for Mr. Giuliani said in a court filing last month that at least some of his claims of election fraud were, quote, substantially true, which is not only untrue by itself, but that's also a really pathetic thing to say. Like, come on. Some of the stuff I said was true. I said a lot of things. Some of them were true. At
least some of it.
That is really pathetic. As recently as just 3 weeks ago, Sidney Powell told a reporter for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that the 2020 election was, quote, essentially a bloodless coup where they took over the presidency of the United States without a single shot being fired. Now, hold on to that thought, because she has moved on from that position in the last 3 weeks and does not believe that it was bloodless anymore. We'll get to that in a little bit. But they are still telling these lies. And many people watching this might think, what's the point of talking about this? Sure, it's interesting to know what the timeline was. But that said, we knew that they were lying. They knew that they were lying. It doesn't really change anything. But that is actually exactly why I want to cover this, because we're now, I don't know, I'm not good at math and I'm in a weird fugue state for my fever, but we're like 9 months from the last election, 10 months. And we had an insurrection, and we have that movement still out there. And like, we know that they were lying, but what has actually been done at the state level? Lots of things have been done, but what has been done at the state level to make it less likely that the sorts of claims they were using will result in actual elections being overturned? They've passed tons of bills, not every single one of them, but the vast majority have resulted in making it easier for Republicans to take personal control over the elections. They're stuffing state secretaries of state at the state level with partisan goons. And so I just throw this out there as a reminder to you that we are cruising every day towards more elections that are going to be less secure than the ones that very nearly were overturned back in 2020. And nobody really seems to be taking it seriously. Certainly not anybody that wants to stop elections from being overthrown.
That's how it works. You ignore the things that are happening from one particular point of view because of just so many. There's a deluge of things that they throw at you. But no, look for actual legislation to be passed, actual agenda items to be put forward. What is the Republican Party's agenda now trickling down from Donald Trump from 20 is that everything that you vote on is a lie. All elections are fraudulent. You have to dismiss them. In many cases, which I don't know if they really realize this, they're doing to their voters. We're telling them not to vote, so then your numbers of voters are gonna go down because they figure the election system is all fraudulent in the first place. So they take up their arms instead, or at least they think they will. This is what you've generated. This is what you've produced from it. And the reason Sidney Powell keeps playing this game is because it's like an actor who was like, who played this iconic role at 20 years old. They're never gonna get another gig again because everyone only remembers her for that. She has to keep playing that role in order to make any money. So let's do the redo of the old role back in 20 and do the redo again and redo again. That's the only way she can continue to make money. What is Sidney Powell gonna do with her career now?
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.